Crumbling school infrastructure has plagued South Africa for many years. Now, the recent horrific death of 3-year-old Vicky earlier this month at Glen Grey Primary School has thrust the issue of pit toilets into the spotlight yet again. Earlier today, Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga briefed the media on these concerns, saying the school now has new toilets. We're joined by Naptosa Executive Director Basil Manuel to discuss this issue. Thank you so much, Basil, for joining us this afternoon. You might have heard earlier myself and my colleague and I, Heidi Jacobs, we spoke about this issue, and she was at that briefing where Angie Motshekga, Minister of Education, said that there's over 3,000 schools that have this issue when it comes to pit toilets in the country. But you must also maybe be a little bit relieved that something is now officially being done as Naptosa.
Thank you, Barron. Good afternoon, and thanks for having me. We are happy with the statement being made. However, we've been here before, and whilst we don't want to be unfair, remember this target was for 2013, and 10 years later, we haven't yet eradicated pit latrines. And by now, when we talk about the dignity of schooling, or as we are currently in Human Rights Month, when we talk about the human rights of children, this surely comes into play. The quality of schooling is not what it should be. So we are happy that there has been progress made. We know, and we've had reports as a union about the things that have been done to date. However, we want to see this stepped up. We can't talk in the 21st century about pit latrines. And of course, the tragedy that has unfolded. Now, we don't have the details, but I want to say that the parents deserve some answers. Somebody has to take responsibility, because many, many things have happened that leave us questioning more than what we seem to be getting answers for. And we want to see something tangible being delivered to the parents.
It is quite sad, and also sad that it had to take the death of Langalam to actually make this issue, something that the government will be looking at now. But I also want to talk about safety in general when it comes to our schools. More should definitely be done when it comes to safety at our schools. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, Barron. When you consider the fact that there are so many little incidents that happen, and some of them have to do with the community, some of them have to do with the surrounds, but a lot has to do with infrastructure and overcrowding. When the school is overcrowded, the ability of the staff there to ensure that every child is safe and is being watched and so on is virtually impossible. And when you talk about 70 and 80 learners per class, as they are in some places, that is not teaching, that is crowd control. If you talk about schools having unsafe infrastructure, you're setting yourself up for a disaster. When you talk about a school not having an appropriate perimeter fence, you are then opening yourselves to allow all sorts of miscreants to also enter the schools. And we know children are impressionable. We know our children are dabbling in things like drugs and violence and the like. And for us as teachers to be able to do our bit to try and prevent that, we need every assistance. And that assistance starts with the quality of the school, that the child is proud of the school that they're at, that the parents are proud of the school and want to protect the school, that they are not part of breaking it down. So yes, teaching is not easy, but it can be made better. And we are happy to hear that something is being done. But when you hear figures of 70,000 classes short, we've been making these noises for years, heightened especially at the time of COVID, when we could not even have all the schools open because we had to do a 50% rotation, and that was purely because of overcrowding. This says this is a story whose time has come long ago. Let's now see the real tangible progress.
Now, I asked Heidi earlier as well, as Naptosa, would you also like to see more cooperation between a government and the private sector to also help alleviate a lot of these problems?
Absolutely. Barron, the private sector is more agile. They are able to do things in a much shorter space of time than government can. And if we want to see quick progress, we need to be embracing more of the private sector to get involved. Of course, it also assists with the financing. We know finance is tight. We know that in all areas there are always competing issues for the same pot of money. So by having more people, particularly companies that are operating in areas where their workers' children are not in optimum spaces of learning, that is where we want to see more help. And the appeal is the same appeal the minister made. We are saying, let's get involved. Let more of us, more businesses, do a little bit more, and then we can turn this around in a shorter space of time.
And you know, when you take a look at the general picture and the safety in schools and the issues of infrastructure, how long do you think it should take maybe government to make sure that this problem is something of the past? Because we did hear a time frame here from Minister Angie Motshekga that it could take possibly a year and a half to eradicate pit toilets. But then again, you know, all of these other issues, it seems like it could take a lot longer. But do you think the government can work on a time frame when it comes to these problems?
Barron, the best we can do is by making comparisons. One of the comparisons that I would make is if we have the same will that we had when we built stadiums, etc., for the World Cup in 2010. I mean, 13 years ago. If we have that same will for our children, we would be able to achieve that in a short space of time. But let me add, it's a moving target. This weekend and Friday, I was down in the Eastern Cape, where I visited a number of schools. I visited a former Model C school that is a Quintile 5 school. And I had to lament with the principal of how the school is no more looking as good as it should. And this is a school that was advantaged in the past, but because of funding problems and less money coming in, it is not in the same condition. And that is the other thing we must guard against. It is not only ensuring that those that don't have now get, it is also to ensure that that infrastructure that we do have, we look after. We don't allow that to deteriorate. Otherwise, we reach the end point with the one just to start all over again with the other. And that is not a plan.
Thank you so much. That's unfortunately all we have time for. Thank you so much, Basil Manuel, the Naptosa Executive Director, just giving us his view there on Minister Angie Motshekga's promise that, you know, work is being done to eradicate pit toilets, but also to upgrade schools' infrastructure around the country. So hopefully we will definitely be keeping a close eye on the developments about this infrastructure plans.